Hi, I'm Temi Houston-based attorney and host of Ask Temi Live, where we discuss the best ways to establish your business, protect your name, and keep your profits. Today's question of the day is, what is a holding company? All right, so let's dig into this. A holding company is kind of like what it sounds like. It's a company that holds assets. It doesn't actually do anything in and of itself besides own things. And it can be a really effective way to kind of protect your different assets if you're a business owner or if you're someone who has significant assets, because it kind of creates layers of limited liability protection. So in general, one of the things, it can be an LLC or it can be a corporation. It's, again, definitely usually one of those limited liability entities. There are also a couple other ones, but we don't really talk about them as much, like the limited liability partnerships, or LLPs. But we're going to just focus on the LLC and the corporation. And so essentially what you'll have is one larger company called the parent company. And then you have subsidiaries. These are smaller companies underneath it that actually do the business. Now, the holding company, the cool thing about the holding company, right, is that the holding company can purchase these other companies, but doesn't have to purchase all of the ownership rights to these other companies and still can maintain a controlling interest. The other thing to keep in mind with a holding company is that, so you have the person who owns the holding company, but each of the individual companies underneath it can have their own unique management structures as well, and unique ownership structures even. The person who owns the holding company can kind of create that separation between, and I'm covering the camera because I talk with my hands, but can kind of create those layers. So one thing that you'll see is real estate investors might have an overall holding company. They might have a company that does the management of the different properties, and then each of the properties, if they're using it for commercial properties or something in terms of their investments, each of those different companies or individual properties have their own companies attached to them. The reason why they're doing that is they don't want, if something happens, let's say someone slips and they fall in one of your properties, your property has money attached to it, but you don't want the money that's attached to that property to be taken or impacted by something that's happened in another property. By having these separate entities set up, you're able to kind of keep those liabilities separate. For someone who's not in real estate, you might have, for example, a company that creates intellectual property, and they keep their intellectual property in one company. They keep the operations in another company, and they might have a building that they operate out of. That's another company. And what they do is they create contracts between all these different companies that they cause them to work together, but those three different companies are owned by one big one, the parent one, and the subsidiaries interact with each other. Again, if something happens, if there's an issue that deals specifically with operations, only the operations assets now are on the line. You see, let's say there's something that happens with the intellectual property. Well, the intellectual property is housed in one separate subsidiary. Only those ones are at risk, right? And so you see how this can be a really strategic way to organize the things that you own and really position yourself as a boss. And then I mentioned it earlier, but for investors, it's a beautiful opportunity to really gain ownership interest in other companies without spending as much money, because you can decide, okay, this is a company I'm interested in. I want to buy 60% of the shares in this company, not necessarily all of them. So only 60%, but I have a controlling interest. So I essentially own this corporation or this company or this company. I mean, it is a beautiful, beautiful structure that can really help people in terms of protecting and safeguarding their assets and their wealth. So that's a really quick overview of what a holding company is, just in case you were wondering. If you have the capability to do it, it makes things a little bit more complicated. Obviously, you might have slightly more complicated taxes, but even in terms of taxes, there's something that's really cool. Sometimes you are able to gain deductions based off of losses of other, some of the subsidiaries can kind of share in some of the losses, so that if there's a company that does really bad or one that does really well, you're able to, again, attribute it all to the same. It depends. I'm going down a rabbit hole, so I'm going to stop. But there are some tax benefits as well to having subsidiaries and parent companies in that unique structure. So keep all of this in mind. If you have the ability to do so, it might be something that you really want to look into, especially if you're a serious entrepreneur or investor, and you really want to figure out ways to best structure your companies and your investments in a way that works for you. All right, I hope that this was helpful. It was a really quick video. I just really wanted to cover that because I know it comes up in terms of questions. You can find out more information about me and my firm by visiting www.toslegal.com. You can also follow me on social media at toslegal. And then if this video was helpful to you, please like and subscribe below. If there are other topics that you want me to cover, feel free to leave a question below. And if it's something that a lot of people ask, or I see people like and things like that, or there's some conversations, or it's just something that's interesting to me, you might see your question on the next video. So you have nothing to lose. I think that's all I have for you. I want you to have an amazing day, and we'll talk soon. Bye.